All rise for the pledge of
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before I start the meeting, I'd like to introduce Jim Titone, sitting fourth down from my left. Jim is from Seabrook, and he is the new Coastal Fish and Game Commissioner. So we're back to a full commission, and I don't know how long it's been, but we got all 11 here. Somebody take a picture. Okay, there'll be a meeting of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission today at 1 o'clock p.m. at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, 11 Haven Drive, Concord, New Hampshire. The public is entitled to attend all commission meetings and when recognized by the chairman. The public may speak on any item on the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to limit public comments to the extent necessary for the orderly conduct of the meeting. One of the things that are required is anybody getting up to speak, give your name and where you're from. And the other thing is that for today, seeing the commission is taking care of the wildlife rule package. During the rule package hearing, I am not allowing any public input. My reason for that is we've already had 3 public hearings. We've already had close to 2 months' time of people to write in. Fish and Game has supplied the commission with all the write-ins. So we've all had an opportunity to read them all. That now it's time for the commission to do their work, and I wanted to where they're paying attention to that without getting interrupted by comments. At the end, there will be, your normal public input. So, with that said, with your motion to approve the March 21st minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor to accept the March 21st minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Item number 2, approval to accept a donation of $10 from the 802 Bass Crew 802 Classic of Thetford, Vermont, as they overpaid for the fishing tournament and would like it to be utilized by the Inland Fisheries Division. Anybody want to make a motion? That's our only item on that one.
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Yep. Do I get a second? Get a second? All in favor of item number 2 to accept the donation of $10?
Aye.
Opposed? Donations accepted. Item number 3, final approval of wildlife rules package, Dan.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Yeah, we'll go over, where's Andy? I think Andy must have assumed that you had more.
Okay, sorry to mention, Dan, one of the things, I know I mentioned it to you, one of the things I'd like to do is, let's take each segment.
Yep.
After the segment, any commissioners have questions, and then we'll vote on that segment.
So yeah, we'll go through. So this presentation is going to be substantially shorter than the previous ones you saw. We'll have a few summary slides per species, and we'll focus on any changes if there were any when we go through. I'd like to thank the commissioners for your attendance at the 3 different public hearings we had. We had great turnout at all the meetings. As Commissioner Green had pointed out, we're pretty far along this process now. For us, it started back in December when we started analyzing this data. It's gone through internal review. We've had our 3 public hearings. The comment period, those comments have been going to all staff as well as the commission. Now we're here with you, we're looking for approval of the rule package to move forward to the next stage in the process, which will be submitting this package to JL Carr, and then in hopes that it gets through there, and then these will be approved in time for June, is typically when it takes place. Like Commissioner Green had suggested, we'll go through species by species, and then what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Andy Timmons. He'll go through the presentation, the presentation for y'all, but we do have project leaders in attendance if there are any questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andy.
I never pressed that.
There you go.
Afternoon, thanks again for your time. As Dan mentioned, this is going to be kind of a truncated version of the rule presentations, rule proposals, and these do represent our final rule proposals based on all the public input that we obtained during the process. All this input was reviewed and considered by the game management team. So I'll start with deer, and there's really no change. There is no change from the initial proposals for deer. So kind of in summary, we're proposing to add either sex hunting opportunity in the form of either sex days in 13 of the 20 wildlife management units. We are not looking to reduce opportunity in any unit, so it's a real beneficial move for hunters, reflecting abundant deer numbers in most units. And in addition, proposing to increase the unit elk permits by 1,000, bring that up to 3,000 unit elk permits, as well as the issuance of 4,000 unit M permits, which has been the case. Online deer registration, due to state law passed in August 2022, we are moving forward with the online registration option for hunters, but we are proposing to close that system down for 5 days so that we can collect the biological data that we need to make management decisions. Asking hunters to retain the head and hide of any deer harvested regardless of method, to retain the head and hide for 48 hours. And to remove the requirement to register a deer before taking another deer. Allow deer to be hunted on islands. And to increase the registration fee collected by a registration agent from the current $2 to $5. And finally, proposed changes to the pre-damage and depredation permits. Allow hunters, allow the grower or his designee to retain all deer taken on these permits, but they must surrender the antlers of deer on bucks that have greater than 4 points. So this, I'll stop here. This covers the deer proposals before I move on to moose.
Okay, Chris, you had a question, and I'll let you go first.
Great, thanks. So my question is the way that the 418 document is presented to us. It looks like all of the proposed changes have been accepted into this document. So you can no longer see what the changes would be if the rules move forward.
So that's the document that Marty's been working on, the draft IP.
Right, so we initially accepted to start the process a February 17th document, which had strike-throughs and underlined and italicized and bolded areas that are new language.
Yeah. So
Those are all gone from the 418 document, and it looks like they've all been accepted. Is that how we should read this, or?
So the version you are looking at, the version that Marty would be
418
the
one?
accepted language if these rule proposals make it through the process.
Okay.
So it reflects these proposed changes.
So it reflects all the proposals that we saw at the February meeting.
Yes.
And then there are a very few number of changes that are still underlined. Are those new as a result of public comment, or are they?
I haven't looked at that document that you're looking at, I don't believe, but there really shouldn't be many things new, because in this whole presentation, there's really only one change from our initial proposals.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Marty's not here to give a more detailed explanation.
So I'm looking at, like, as an example, on page 13, on the 418 document, there's what is really just a simple clarifying edit. You strike out a rule reference, and you add a reference to a line above.
Okay.
So is that new from
So
this
what-
one, or is that?
So what I believe you may be looking at is a couple days ago, 3 or 4 of us sat down and looked at, there was some, because rules have changed over time, sometimes references get mislabeled or become obsolete. Linda Burville, myself, and Marty sat down Monday, I believe it was, and went through some of that and fixed those errors that existed. So that, I'm guessing, is what you're seeing, but there's nothing there that reflects any change in intent or proposals. It's, because a rule changes over time, the reference letter may change.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have you move on to the deer thing. Does any commissioner want to make a motion on the deer part of the proposals?
I have a question about process.
About what?
Process.
All right, go with the question of process.
I have not participated in this previously. This is my first rulemaking process. So similar to what Commissioner Hodgson said, this reflects the changes, but we don't have time to go through and kind of read them and make sure they're aligned with our understanding. So if we vote on this, then essentially we're voting on what's written in here. Am I understanding correctly?
I think I'm getting it. I'm not, this is the director. Can answer.
So this summary that Andy just
My
presented,
impression is right now, we have a presentation on the rules of the changing or not change for the deer.
yeah,
We'll be voting whether to accept those rules or not, or make changes if you need to.
right. And I follow that part, and I was at all the hearings, so none of this is a surprise to me. But this is a bit of a surprise to me. So if I say I'm in support or not supporting, let's say I'm in support of this, I'm essentially supporting everything that has been changed in writing, but I haven't had the opportunity to review the written document.
Yeah, and I'd reflect it, I'd better describe it more the other way around. If
Okay.
you support everything, all the proposals you've seen to date through these presentations, though, that should all be reflected in that document.
With added detail or exactly with this level of simplicity?
It should be that level. Well, I mean, it would, these are more concepts. What you are reading in that document is the actual FIS language, the jail car standards. But the intent is all the same. It results in making these concepts into rule, like jail car standards.
Right, I believe I've got what Commissioner Hodgson is talking about. We got this handed to us today. I don't know any commissioner that's had time to read it. We've seen 3 separate proposals that you've made on the deer regulations that you plan to change. Am I going in the right direction here? So I guess the question is, and you're right, it's going to take an awful long time to have each commissioner start reading down this.
And I don't know, I asked, because I haven't been through this process, so I don't know if this is the normal sequencing cadence, but I feel a little bit, I guess the word is insecure to go along and vote for this without having an opportunity to read what's in writing.
Yeah, so I'll just speak a little of that. So this is the normal flow, because again, so as we go through we're constantly rereading, looking at the edits, we're finding, you know, inaccurate references back to rules that don't exist or they've changed. So what Andy's saying is, if you notice a difference in there from what you saw at the February one, those are essentially editing tweaks, but no change in the intent of the proposals we presented at the hearings. There's really no way for us to get it to you earlier because we're literally making changes throughout the entire process as we notice these editing errors, which quite frankly come up even after the fact. You know, we'll go back through the rules and say, oh, look at that, you know, FIS 207.4B does not exist anymore, it should say A, or, so those will be the changes that you see. And again, we can't, I mean, it took us an hour to go through this presentation when we're just giving concepts versus putting every individual FIS word up on the screen, which is why that's provided on the website. But again, that's a constantly changing document straight up until it gets to JLCAR. The concepts and the intent of these don't change, but there may be an A becomes a B, or there's an old rule reference that doesn't exist anymore that gets removed. But again, you know, that's why it would be difficult to give you something far in advance, because we would do it and then a week later we may find another reference that changes.
I may be out of step here, but let me try and clarify it a little bit more. I think what's happening is, are we getting the impression that what we vote on coming off of this screen, if it's going to be any different than all this?
It shouldn't be. Not
Shouldn't be.
Not the concepts.
I think
Again,
we're looking for some comfort. That's the word I'm looking for.
so what I could say is, what will not happen is we won't have a proposal here that says we're going to issue 3,000 L permits and all of a sudden it's 3,500.
Yeah.
You know, we don't make those types of changes. The changes we make are changes in references to certain things. You know, they're editing changes. They're not changes in broad concepts. You know, we're not going to go from 2 either 6 days to 4, or we're not going to, you know, add bag limits that weren't there before.
All right, so in other words, what I want to be straight on is, you know, as an example, we get the moose section, you say you're going to give X amount of permits.
We're given X amount of
The commission
permits.
votes for those amount of permits. I don't want to see a change.
Yeah, and that, we would not do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
And I don't think that's gonna happen
I'm
either.
making sure.
If we look at allowed deer hunting on islands, that has to come with some qualification, right? That's not just like, is it quite simply now, like, is it just repealing something? The increase from 2 to 5, that's straightforward, right? How is that gonna be different? But if we look at allowed deer hunting on islands, does that come with?
That's removing the prohibition, because right now there's a
Okay.
prohibition that says you can't do it.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
that's just
removing the
within those.
language, just getting rid of the language that prevents it, so now it's allowed.
And this is where, by going by the section, if you have a specific question, you'll have that on.
Yeah.
How's that?
And again, we can, I mean, you'll have a chance to review this straight up until the point where it goes to JLCAR. Yeah, and prior to them approving it. So if you notice something you think's egregious that we missed for some reason, and you think it's substantially different from the concepts we've been providing, then we can always address that. But I, you know, I can confidently say that we haven't snuck anything in or changed any of the broad concepts. There are changes in, again, references or, you know, editing errors, things like that.
So it's a little bit of an uncomfortable comment, right? Because I don't want you to think like, I don't have trust in what you're doing and that you're, you know, going in and doing something intentional. I don't think that's the case. It's just if we're talking about written rules, right, that then get approved and lived on forever. And then there's, you know, Commissioner Hudson raised my hand and I supported it, but I voted on that, right? So it's not that I don't want you to take my comment or questions in any way other than just kind of like the process of it all. If I could close with cycle of improvement recommendation, because I understand how iterative this is and how much work a color-coded or to, you know, like Commissioner Hodgson said, That makes it easy, right? That as we're going through, I can key in on those highlights and just follow along as you go through that.
Yep.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Andy, do you have a copy of what's in front of the commission?
I do not. Yeah, so, I've, in the 20-some-odd years I've done rulemaking, it's always been on a project leader level, so I haven't gotten into this level, but my assumption over time is that we present concepts in a PowerPoint presentation. This document is going on by staff that we have faith in, that is capturing our comments. And I'm not convinced that in the past that the commission has seen this level of draft IP. So that, we have a new legal coordinator, so things are being a little bit different, but at the end of the day, we have to have faith that we have good people working there.
The other thing the commission should be aware of is regardless, once it leaves our hands, it goes over to Gelcar and it hits a different set of lawyers over there, and they will continue to make changes.
Yeah.
So the concept that you folks are the last say in the process is probably not correct.
And they do routinely send it back to us with edits, because again, they'll find references that we didn't pick up on, where, again, we got an inaccurate reference here. I mean, it's a substantial document, so there's a lot of room for little things like that to be missed. So I don't think there's ever been a case where Gelcar has not sent it back to us with edits.
Right, and that has happened in the past.
Absolutely.
We want to ensure that the process that we're going through is correct. And one of those processes is that this commission has a say. And we're at that point now. Once it leaves here today, our say has been basically taken away after that.
Mr. Chair, do you need a motion?
Okay, I would like a motion to get into discussing the rules on the deer.
I make a motion that we discuss the deer, proposed deer rules.
Okay,
I'll second it.
we have a second. Discussion on the deer proposed rules. Commissioner Temple.
Thank you. I'm on, let's see, page 3 at the bottom. It's on the slide as well. I'm not sure that I'm convinced that a hunter needs to retain his head and hide for 48 hours from the time of registration. And maybe we could offer a little more input here. I don't know if there's discussion here. It's a motion, so maybe somebody else might want to talk about that a little bit, besides myself. I'm not in favor of item 4.
So you're going on item number 4, the hunter shall retain head and hide from 48 hours from the time of registration. I know that has been one of the concerns from the public, especially amongst the, I believe, other than the bow hunters. I too would like to know why are we retaining a head for 48 hours?
Okay, so the desire to retain the head was to prove identification of sex if needed, and also there'd be value during the registration, during the biological check process. There's data specific to the head of deer, the antlers, and the teeth. That is important data, biological data that we collect. We discussed whether or not it was necessary to retain the hide. We had no preference. We reached out to law enforcement, who specified that they would like the hide retained, and if Dave wants to share his division's comments related to that.
So currently, they have to hold the head and hide for an archery kill for 48 hours. Now, when it goes online, you don't have a deer coming into a check station. So it just gave us the ability to look further, but if it creates a lot of heartache, as long as the archery stays the same, we're okay with it.
Okay, I'm going to use my own executive privilege here for follow-up on this one. I'm going to be guessing, and I think I'm pretty safe in saying the majority of deer hunters, when they go for a deer, they're having it processed by a butcher or, a processor. What would be wrong with processor holding the head
Well, that comes,
instead of the hunter himself.
that's part of this.
Yeah, if I may, I asked the colonel about that specifically, and he said as long as that sportsman can bring the person back to the carcass. They can't leave it in the woods, the coyotes will drag it off, but if you brought it to the butcher, got it out back behind the barn, you know, I remember, because I was worried about this as well, you have some people live in condominiums, and, you know, in southern part of the state where it's warm, and he had made it clear that if you could ask the butcher to set it aside, a lot of them get it only picked up a few times a week. So, yeah, it's a process. It's a process, and I remember asking questions about it.
What I'm concerned about is it says, quote, "The hunter shall retain the head and hide 48 hours from the time of registration, period."
When you bring a deer to a butcher, that's still your deer.
Right?
So that's still your head and heart.
May I weigh in? I have some commentary on this as well.
Go ahead.
To flesh out Commissioner Temple. I talked to my processor, who is also a licensed guide, and he said this is very cumbersome, the amount of deer, and he also does moose and bear. And to expect to produce a hide, a head and a hide would just be happenstance. He has a whole pile of them out in a, waste management bin, and to expect him the seal, which we're doing away with, goes through the hind leg, that the plastic tag, and it's just unrealistic. The other issue is the urban dwellers. How can you maintain this? This is not sanitary, and some of the season we have warm days, and it's just unrealistic. It's a sanitation issue to maintain it. And the last one is, if you're a hunter from a state like Pennsylvania, you can't retain the head. You can't take it back to Pennsylvania with you. So what, you gotta find somebody like the guide maybe you hired, or you had a camp you borrowed, and somebody's supposed to retain the head while you get to go home with the meat part of the deer to Pennsylvania. So I just see this as, I would like it to go away even for the bow, because bow season starts when it's warm, and trying to retain a head and hide during September or October could be, just really, for lack of a better word, disgusting.
If I can I add a comment? As I mentioned, the hide is understandable, but if you make the decision not to require the head, one negative impact of that is we collect deer heads from butcher shops. We collect about 500 a year for CWD surveillance. If there's no longer any incentive or requirement to retain the head, that may impede our ability as a department to continue with chronic waste and disease surveillance. So something that should be given consideration when making a decision.
All right, Commissioner DeVosa.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you kind of on those lines, what are the other biological reasons other than our CWD?
So biological reasons on the head would be,
Like, I guess let me clarify. As a department, like for instance with the archery season, you already have it. Have you guys had to need access to that head within 48 hours before? Is there situations where that has occurred?
we have not, but law enforcement, I suspect, has had to see those head and hides for law enforcement related activities.
And then CWD would be the biological.
Okay. Commissioner Hudson.
Yep. This has been in existence for archery kill deer. I've received zero feedback from any of my constituents on this one. I did hear the commentary at the public hearings. The archery season tends to be the warmer season. It's warmer, so it would be more of a concern. I would be in support of this when I look at the online deer registration. So that is a brand new program. We heard feedback at the public hearings about the concern about the integrity of that. And so I think especially because the online deer registration is new, this gives law enforcement the ability to kind of audit. Also gives the biologists the ability to audit to make sure that the data that they're collecting, that there's some integrity behind it. So I think it would be premature to not support this, given that it would be the first season of the online deer registration.
Okay, anybody else have a comment?
I have a question about the timing, because it's my understanding that Dan, because we're going to online, the first 2 or 3 days of the season will be mandatory in-person registration. And at that point, that is to get biological samples. So I don't, if we're getting biological samples in that time frame, why do we need this extra step?
That would provide biological samples related to age as well as animal characteristics. That would not necessarily provide the biological sample related to CWD. Back in the early stages of collecting heads for CWD, we were asking hunters at the registration station if we could remove the head at that time. Most of them said no, and honestly, I can't blame them. You like to go home and deal without a head. So we'll get the age, we'll get the antler characteristics at the time of registration, but that will not, we won't get that CWD sample. That we're really relying on butcher shops retaining those heads so that we can collect them.
Well, is there some way we could?
Okay, can we ask a follow-up in
Sure,
case somebody else has something they want to go in, please?
Mr. Chair, for me, in reality, for me, and I assume there's other hunters the same thing, the last 3 deer I shot was a warm day, it went to the butcher shop, right there. There may be people on a warm day or people that shoot one when it's snowing and it's cold. They may take it home and it may hang for a couple of days to age before it goes to the shop. My point here is that once my deer goes to the processing place, it's right in front of me. The thing is skunned, the head is taken off, the hide goes in this pile, the head goes in that pile, and it goes into the locker. Now, am I required to take that hide home? Keep it around for 3 or 4 days?
The way I read this,
You are.
that you shall retain the head and hide for 48 hours.
And-
In other words, your possession.
That's right. So anyway, for me, the antler comes off, it's got the tag on the antler, and when I pick up the meat, there's a tag there, so they know it's mine. But the point here is, I know you need it for your chronic waste, 500, but I can't imagine that after the first 3 or 4 days, if you haven't gotten 500, there's so many shops around the place, around the state that process them. There must be heads all over the place to get data you need.
Not necessarily. Dan, you want to speak
Yeah,
to
so,
cooperation?
yeah, so part of the problem is staffing to go pick up the heads. So there's a certain amount of butchers that we work with to get heads. I don't necessarily see that it'll completely prevent us. It potentially could have an impact, although as long as hunters continue to bring their deer to butchers whole, the butcher could still retain the head for us. They wouldn't necessarily have to retain it for the hunter. There's potential it could have an impact on our CWD samples, but maybe not. Again, hunters will have to bring, because I believe it also says in rule already that you have to bring to the registration station, you need information to identify the sex of the deer. So they should be able to get it there. From a biological perspective, we'll likely get what we need. I suppose CWD samples could be slightly impacted, but again, as long as most hunters are bringing those deer to their butcher's hole to begin with, which most probably do, we'll probably still be fine. I think more than anything, it's a question of enforcement needs. So in large part, I would defer to law enforcement on their desire for this. I think we've got enough other rules on the books to get our biological samples. So I guess I would defer largely to law on the 48-hour retention. It is my understanding, though, that it doesn't have to be in your physical possession, because again, your deer leaves your possession when you bring it to the butcher or the taxidermist. They need to keep records of who those animals belong to. So I do believe law enforcement considers that still, under your possession when you drop it off at a butcher. That's why we won't have seals anymore, but that seal or proof of registration needs to follow that deer around.
Commissioner Cavey.
Can you speak to what is the shelf life of a deer head so that any biological data collected is truly viable?
Yeah, so if we're talking about the CWD season, which is the most important, not long early in the season, we really don't start collecting that until muzzleloader season. Certainly longer during the muzzleloader and rifle portion of the season because it's colder out. Those samples, those heads can be stored for perhaps up to a week as long as they're not freezing thawing and it making kind of a mess of that tissue sample. So very short early on, but admittedly we're not collecting in September for a variety of reasons. You have a little bit of time during the surveillance period when we're collecting.
Commissioner Stoll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask the Major a question?
Sure can.
Major, is it law now that if you're a bow hunter and you shoot a deer, you have to keep the head in high 48 hours?
Correct.
If I shoot one with a gun, do I have to do that now?
No.
Okay. So this is basically lining up the gun hunters with the bow hunters.
Correct.
But the reason, not from years past here, is for bow hunters. The reason it is for bow hunters because you can shoot a deer with a bullet and then stick an arrow in it and make it look like at a registration station that deer was shot with a bow.
Correct.
When closer examination is trauma around, you can tell real quick whether that was shot with a gun or a bow.
Correct.
Thank you.
Well,
Dave, while you're up, what is law's opinion on the?
so, Commissioner Hodgson described it perfectly. Online registration station, we don't know what it's going to be like. We know there's going to be a significant amount of deer that are going to be registered that no one is going to set eyes on. So we don't know what type of enforcement tool we're going to need. So it would be nice, but in 26 years of doing this, I've never had an actual hunter complain to me that they've had their hose head and neck for 48 hours. So, and again, whether it happened in the butcher shop or the taxidermy shop, I've never had it to be an issue.
Commissioner DeRosa.
I think we should err on the side of caution to support law enforcement to make sure that they're not put in a situation that makes it difficult for us to enforce our laws. And I think it's as simple as that. I mean, obviously biologically, you're saying it's not necessarily as imperative, but we can't tie the hands of our law enforcement.
Okay, does anybody else? Commissioner LaChance.
I would have to agree from a law enforcement perspective with the new online registration going on. We just don't know how that's going to play out. And when they need to conduct an investigation, there's nothing, no one's ever seen the deer here. I think at least for this season, this rulemaking period, we should leave it in there. And then if it turns out it's not necessary, it's not working out, it could be changed next time. But with the online registration coming in right now, I think it makes sense to leave it in there.
Okay, any other commissioner have comments?
I'll move the question.
I'm just getting ready to say, do we have a motion to accept the proposal?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal.
I'll
Do I have
second
a
it.
second? Seconded by Commissioner DeRosa. All those in favor to accept the deer portion proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay.
Here?
Can you raise your hand?
No.
Thank you.
Was it just two? Okay. And the motion passes to accept the deer card proposal. Next group, Dan.
Okay, we'll move on to moose. So moose, like deer, no proposed changes from the initial proposals that you've seen during the process, but I would like to give a recap. So we are proposing to move C1 from the White Mountains region to the North region because of both the similarities seen in the north in terms of overall moose density as well as important moose habitat features. So proposing to make that change. And as far as Permit issuance, proposing to issue permits in 3 of the 6 moose management regions. So that would result in a total statewide permit issuance of 33, plus the 2 additional permits for the Fremont and Wildlife Heritage Federation permits. So that would bring the statewide total issuance to 35 permits. That covers most of them.
Okay, do I have a motion on the moose proposal part?
So moved.
I'll second it.
What's the proposal? You want to accept it, not accept it, so we can
Yeah.
have the discussion?
Excuse me, accept it.
Okay, so motion then to accept and then move, the moose proposal part. Discussion. I don't see any discussion. Those in favor of accepting the moose proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Okay, we'll move on to bear. Thank you.
I wish they were all that easy, Jim.
You and I both. Bear, no proposed changes from the initial package that you saw. So we're not proposing any changes to season structure in 5 of the management unit, bear management regions. That includes the North, White Mountains, Central, Southwest 1, Southwest 2. So the same season structure that we've had in place for a number of years. We are proposing to extend the still hunting season in the Southeast region by 23 days. In addition, moving forward with establishing the hybrid system of registering bears that would incorporate law enforcement as well as department staff as well as bear registration stations. Beginning in 2024, allow hunters to purchase an additional bear tag for use only in the White Mountains region. Add the following items to the bear kill report, a check off regarding whether or not the hunter had the permit to use dogs to take bear, as well as whether or not the hunter has viewed the recommended educational materials, as well as require hunters to present the permit to use dogs to take bear at the time of harvest if the bear was taken to use dogs. So that covers the bear proposals.
Do I have a motion on the bear proposal?
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Have
I'll
one.
second it.
Okay, discussion on the bear proposal.
Well, there's more, Mr. Chairman, there's more proposals than just what you put up there, right, Andy?
There was some, what I would call housekeeping proposal related to some changes in when the guide's application was due in order to be eligible for the bear guide application, unless there's something I'm forgetting.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. I got down here, why those changes on the bear guide permit?
Okay, so right now, on our application to obtain a bear guide license, you need to have already been issued your regular hunting guide license. That, I believe, you can start applying for, I think it's early to mid-December, whereas you can start applying for the bear guide license in early January. And the issue we're running into, so law enforcement has to do a background check, I believe, as well as check CPR, and where there's a real time crunch there between the two, and it's resulting in people submitting their application for the bear guide license without yet having their regular guide license. So what those changes were was to remove the requirement for the guide the regular guide license from the bear guide application, so we could accept those applications, start the process, and then at the tail end of the process, they would have to prove that they were issued their regular guide hunting license. So it's really just a way to give both law enforcement as well as the Wildlife Division more time, and the hunters, more time to get their paperwork in before we have to run that lottery, which occurs, I think, in February.
Yeah, and I'll just add, so removing the requirement for them to have that prior to submitting the application, Our staff, Linda and our staff up there that go through these, regardless, always double check to make sure that they have a valid license prior to them getting it in the lottery. So whether we have it at the beginning or the end doesn't really matter, because we're always double checking to make sure it's in the system before we issue them out.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hodgson.
I have two questions. So first, just generally, the philosophy around not asking for email addresses. I noticed that we asked for phone number, address, name, obviously. Why not collect email addresses?
Just fair
Well,
registration.
generally, I intended to ask this question to help you really well.
Yeah.
I mean, email is such an efficient way to communicate with people, so much more so than mail or phone calls.
You know, it's really never come up. I don't think we've ever had a request or we felt that there was a need to collect an email address on a registration.
Yeah, we do get email addresses through licensing. So we have email addresses for a good portion of hunters out there. When they buy their license, they can opt in or out of getting, further communications with the department. So that tends to be a little bit more of an efficient way, because there's also a mechanism for them to say whether or not they want to get other communications from us. So by and large, we're getting those email addresses when someone purchases their license now.
Does it follow up on that? Can you put a percentage to it? Is it 75?
I can't put a percentage to it. I can double check with Sue, and we could send some information out. Everything we collect on these, so we have a number of different databases within the department. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't linked to one another. So every time we collect more information, it's more stuff that needs to be entered and verified. And so because we're largely getting those through licensing, we haven't looked to get them on registration forms. Because again, if we need to, and we have in the past. So like, for example, can't remember the year, maybe four years ago or so, 5 years ago, when chronic wasting disease was first discovered up in Quebec. We used the email, we were able to email every hunter that had said they were fine with receiving communications from us to inform them chronic wasting disease has been discovered in Quebec. You're only allowed to bring back deboned meat. So we have used that in the past before. I can check with Sue Perry in licensing and try and get a percentage of how many of those we tend to get. I don't know offhand though. Yeah.
Then my second question is,
No, that's fine. All right, go ahead.
bear guide permit. So this is minor, but the permits are due on a given Friday, third Friday in December, or if they're mailed, postmarked by the second Friday, right? So it's a week that we get. But then later in the rule, when it comes time for the Group A and Group B permits, you have a slightly different timeline. You have, again, a Friday, but in that case, they only have to be postmarked by the Monday. So I'm just wondering so that the same standard applies for everything and somebody doesn't accidentally get it backwards or screw it up and have them be negatively impacted.
Yeah.
And why not just have the previous Friday be the postmark date for everything, and then the next Friday be the in-hand application date for everything, so it's not a big issue, but it just caught my eye that you have a slightly different approach.
I think that serves as one of the examples that we talked about earlier of rules that, sometimes things like that don't get spotted. It would seem to me that the postmark date ought to be the same for both.
So that's
Chris, can you give me the reference?
yeah, so 110206A is where the application is third Friday in December or the second Friday of mail, okay? 110206A. And then for Group A and Group B, it's 110206G2.
Okay.
And that's where it says third Friday in January or the third Monday in January. See you, Marty.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Director Mason.
Chris, getting back to your first question, I think part of our problem in our database systems, very old. I think we're kind of trapped in a mindset around the old system, and we are getting ready to introduce some new systems. I don't want to put into rules that we're going to be collecting information that might be a problem for us to manage properly. But I would like to get our new database system up and running and maybe revisit this in the future. The other part of it is getting to, we've changed, under New Hampshire law, you gotta allow folks to opt out of giving you an email address. And I think originally our licensed emails, you actually had to opt in to allow us to send you something, and we have now changed that to an opt-out. So the number of emails that we can now send to has gone up, maybe not tremendously, but it is, we are going up, because now people aren't, they gotta opt out instead of requesting to be left in. So that's changed those numbers a little bit. And hopefully we'll continue to build on that. But our computer system is quite, our database system's quite antiquated. I think that's part of our problem. Would you?
Yeah,
And unfortunately, I'm a terrible person as far as computers go. So I can't really tell you about this Salesforce thing, and I don't know whether you can or not, Dan.
Yeah,
But
not completely.
my understanding is it'll be much easier to collect data, manage data, and control the data usage so that, like, maybe it's something that Dan's organization enters, but Dave's organization will have access to it in order to run some, to get information that they need or whatever, but as well as public relations for hunter safety or whatever the issues may be. And we're trying to get there, but we're still in the process thereof.
Okay, anybody else? I'm not seeing any motions to accept the bear.
Sorry, Sylvie.
The what? You gotta move up then if you want.
Well,
Speak up, I can't see behind you. Go ahead.
So if we want to make a change that Commissioner Hodgson was recommending about aligning dates, we need an amended motion, or is that something that?
So I would want to double check those dates with Linda Verville. Not knowing offhand, I would want to double check to make sure that date wasn't specifically picked because of deadlines for her ability to process these things internally before lotteries are run and the like. Some of these are pretty tight time frames, and we were trying to expand as much as we could for hunters to make it easier, because as Andy had pointed out, we were running into issues where they were holding on to their applications for an extended period of time, waiting for background checks, CPR certification before they finally got their actual license, and then certain individuals would miss the deadline. We tried to expand that out as much as we could in both directions. I would want to double check. I mean, if it's a difference of, if it's a difference of just making it more consistent and it's not going to impact our ability to get stuff in on time, I don't think we'd be opposed to making a slight adjustment like that. I would want to confirm with her that it wasn't specific to deadlines for when the lottery has to be run though.
And I appreciate that. I think my question is more about process, right? At the beginning, I said, hey, are we voting on this or are we voting on this? So if we vote and align on this, does it matter if you change the date or not, or do we have to have a vote on that? If we go back to the conversation at the beginning, if it makes sense, change it. If it doesn't make sense, don't change it.
I would say this is a change. It's not a substantive change. So if you're voting to approve it, they're making this change like this is not a substantive change. It would just be, to make things more agreeable.
That makes sense to me, but I wanted
Yep.
to make sure.
There will be changes, I guarantee you, that Joe Carr will kick back and say, you need to move this comma, you need to capitalize this, so there will be other changes, but they won't be substantive.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, the motion to accept the Bear proposal, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Okay, next we'll cover turkey. So turkey, no proposed changes from the initial proposals. So same season structure that has been in place, as well as was incorporated in the initial proposals for spring, youth, fall archery, as well as fall shotgun, with these two exceptions. Allow for the taking of a second spring bird in Wildlife Management Unit I-1, and to suspend fall shotgun in Unit J1 until the spring harvest density climbs back above that 0.5 threshold, at which time we would come forward to reopen. We are moving forward with the requirement to, the ability to take a second turkey before registering the first, and to prohibit the ability to take turkeys either by reaping or fanning. And similar to deer, allow turkey registration agents to charge up to $5 for the process of registering the bird. That covers it for turkey.
Is that on the turkey? Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I have a motion to accept, do I have a second?
Second.
A second, discussion. Commissioner DeRosa.
I have a question about the removing the requirement to register a turkey before taking another. I remember from the earliest meeting we had around this that there was concern that some people were rushing information. Have we thought about the implications of how vulnerable turkey are actually to killing a second one on a turkey set, where one turkey starts beating up a dead turkey and then can be killed? My point being is that the South is experiencing massive declines in turkey seasons that have become increasingly liberalized. Is the biological error we're concerned about outweighing the fact that we're probably going to have people who are a little more apt to follow the rules suddenly tagging a lot more turkeys? And I'm just concerned that that's a little too much too soon for something that we're seeing play out very negatively throughout the country right now. So I would propose, if there's no great biological loss here, that we don't think it's like corrupting the data so bad that that's removed from the proposal.
Anybody else with discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I actually got two issues.
I'll let you go with two.
Thank you. This thing here says, I'm from Coos County. Coos County winters are a little bit rougher than they are the rest of the part of the state. We got turkeys coming out of our yin-yang up there. I would rather see hunters be able to shoot turkeys rather than winter taking them. Turkeys are ground feeders. We've been lucky. We've been lucky the last two winters with the amount of snow that we've got. They've been able to cope. But our normal winter, the snow is real deep. Turkeys will have a rough time trying to survive. I would rather see a hunter have a chance to shoot a turkey rather than have a quote winter kill. I've brought this up every year since I've been a commissioner. It hasn't amounted to a tinker's dam, to be honest with you, because obviously you folks don't listen to what I have to say about turkeys in the North End. My second issue is, when I became a commissioner, I vowed never to vote for an anti-hunting rule or law. Reaping and fanning, and I have no idea what reaping is, I know what fanning is. That has taken away a form of hunting. I will not vote for that. I'm just stating my reasons. You guys can vote the way you want them. But the turkey issue, why we can't have a fall shotgun season, I still don't understand why.
So I would not agree with you that birds in the North Country are suffering high winter mortality. My graduate work on wild turkeys was tracking upwards to 100 radio call turkeys for 2 years, and winter mortality was almost non-existent because of human-related foods that these birds are living off. So I don't believe that those birds are particularly vulnerable to winter mortality. And the fall shotgun, it all comes back to our 10-year management plan when we adopted thresholds as to when we would determine when these populations were available to additional, more liberalized hunting. And whether there's turkeys everywhere in the North Country or if there's turkeys that are congregated in the best available habitat along Route 3, we could debate, but we certainly know that turkey densities in the North Country are much lower than they are in the rest of the state, and they're considerably below those thresholds that were established in that 10-year management plan. Your comments on reaping and fanning, I don't have a lot to say on that, but I guess it would have been good to have this discussion earlier on in this process rather than at this point, because we were under the impression that there's been a lot of support for that.
And I'll take exception to that, Andy. This is our time to discuss this. We don't need to talk about it earlier. I take that as a slam, Andy.
Well, it wasn't.
This is our time. We've listened, we've gone to 3 hearings. I've traveled all over the state to these 3 hearings. I've listened to the public. Now this is our turn right now.
Understood.
And I'm raising my term right now.
I would just say, we welcome comments from the commission at any point in this process. And I think Andy covered our proposals for a fall shotgun in the north. We certainly listen to you. We've put together a lot of information to try and explain our point of view on that over the years. I know when Kent was here, he pulled together quite a bit of analysis on where turkey hunters were coming from, where they were taking them, all because we wanted to look into your requests. So we certainly listen to you. It's just we're following what the objectives are in the plan.
How often is that renewed? Follow up, Mr. Chairman? Follow up?
Yes, you may follow up.
How often is that management plan renewed?
10 years it'll be up in 2025.
So you set a management plan now, and it's good for 10 years?
Yes.
With no changes? Is that sound management?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it typically is.
Doesn't sound too sound to me.
Yeah, now, I mean, there's nothing to say that if we didn't find something that was egregiously inappropriate, we couldn't try and go in earlier and make changes, but it's pretty standard practice to have long-term management plans. Because again, you're looking for consistency. You're looking for consistency for a number of reasons. One is for user groups, so that they know what to expect from year to year. But it's standard practice to have long-term management plans.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You gone once already?
I did, yes.
Okay, could I go next? Thank you so much. My comments on the reaping and the fanning. I agree with Commissioner Stoll. I just kind of put it in a different term than how he puts it. When we first saw that, my comment was, when we saw the picture of the hunter in camouflage, standing there with turkey feathers on the back of his head. I thought you were showing it. My comment was that was about as smart as somebody putting deer antlers on their head in the deer season. This is telling somebody how they're gonna hunt. I agree a lot with what Commissioner Stoll is going, that I don't want to get into telling somebody how they're going to hunt or not hunt. But I think it ought to be taken out of there also. If somebody is crazy enough to put feathers on their head during the turkey season, I shouldn't have to babysit them. That's common sense. And I'm not a big believer in us dictating on what they're going to do on it. So I also will be in line with Commissioner Stoll again. I think that should be taken right out. As far as the shooting the turkeys up north, that's your area. That's all I have to say on that one. Commissioner Hodson,
I have two questions.
go ahead.
Relative to Commissioner DeRosa's comment about the effect of taking multiple birds down south, do you have any experience, any knowledge? I mean, there's been a lot of work to bring the turkey population to where it is, and I think his question is, again, I'm interested in understanding your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so, it's hard to put a metric on it. So right now, it's about 25% of the hunters that take one gobbler in the spring take a second gobbler. How that would change under the scenario you described, it's hard to say. It might increase it to some degree, whether or not it'd be at a level where it would ultimately have a negative impact on the population. It's hard to say. The concerns over data management were one of the reasons for this. Biologically, I don't think we're tied to either one. The only question I would raise is, do we want to be consistent between turkey and deer? So if we're gonna allow it for deer, we want to allow it for turkey. I don't have the answer, but you know, it's one of those proposals that, you know, that again, biologically, I don't believe we have a strong tie. I think it could result in some additional harvest, but to the extent I don't have the ability to put a metric there.
I understand the different perspectives regarding reaping and fanning, representing the southern part of the state. I do see it as a big safety concern. I've seen a lot of stupid things in the southern part of the state where there is a high density of people trying to use a very limited amount of resources. So I have concerns about the safety aspect of that.
Commissioner Cavey.
Just, there'll be two comments. If I can.
All right, starting now, 2 comments only before we go on to another, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you. I did some homework, called members of the National Wild Turkey Federation, and received comments from the National Wild Turkey Federation. Okay. First comment was, do not allow the taking of 2 turkeys on the same day. In the same breath, it was referenced about what's been going on down south. I Googled up reaping and fanning. It took me immediately to southern states that actually talk about reaping and fanning and the practice and the decline of turkeys. The one thing that I looked for and could not obtain is reaping and fanning, okay, a real unfair practice in the pursuit of a wild turkey. Okay, it's a serious. Turkey Federation people, when I asked them, what do you think about this? They said, sounds like a good way to get shot. Independently of each other, separate phone calls, not talking to each other, okay? There is I have a concern, and having taken my own time to reach out to the constituency who are avid turkey hunters, hunt in multiple states, I am not going to agree that fanning and reaping is probably a good practice for New Hampshire. So that's what I have to say, and that's why.
Commissioner DeRosa.
I don't want to ask.
What?
He was so disappointed.
Welcome to my world, AJ.
I want to comment, you know, something that's really changed for turkey hunting is our allowing the use of tungsten shot now, which is highly deadly compared to lead for humans as well as turkeys. 2 weeks ago in South Carolina, a gentleman was killed. The law enforcement did try to confirm if it was related.
It was not fanning.
It was not fanning. Okay, thank you. they were using tungsten shot, though, I believe, from what I read in the paper. But point being, there are instances. Kansas, for instance, had a father-son incident that involved breathing. The reason we don't allow the using of deer decoys, the reason we have to wear fluorescent orange during the deer season, are all safety issues. This is a safety issue. One person dying in the state because somebody decides to go up and reap or fan is just not a good practice. It's too much for, like, there's just no reason. There's no good reason to say that we're denying something. Because that same argument could say, why can't I use a deer decoy? I can't because it's dangerous. Because not only am I putting myself at risk, I'm also putting somebody else at risk to having to live with the fact that they potentially killed me. So I just think that it's there is no great loss on a hunter's ability to kill turkeys. And in fact, many turkey hunters will tell you how ineffective reaping and fanning can often be. So it's not necessarily the perfect silver bullet to kill a bird, but there's going to be no great loss in the state or denial of any hunter's ability for us to take precautionary safe steps that we've actually reflected in our deer policies already. And that is also, again, accounting for the fact that tungsten carbide, TSS loads, are becoming increasingly more common for people to use, which can kill things at 70 yards. This isn't lead at 30, it's tungsten at 30. And that is a reason why the state should be ahead of the game, because one death is too many.
Anybody else?
If I may, just a comment. Taking the second bird, the little turkey hunting I've done, I worry about taking a shot at a running bird. I got my one bird, now they're all moving. And so I see the concern of sending a bird away injured or just sending a bird away injured. But I think that it's a 10-year plan, but we revisit it every 2 years, and you guys have got your chart. So just as you took out, you suspended J1 and you allowed I1, I think that in a 2-year period of time, I trust the department is going to see those takes and adjust accordingly. So I'm happy to stick with what you propose.
Okay, anybody else have comments? Okay, the motion is to accept it, is to accept the plan as written. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, what?
So is there a pending motion on either A or?
Say what?
Did anyone make a motion on removing the second bird?
Yeah, what we have is a motion to accept.
Nobody made an amendment.
The turkey
Nobody
proposal.
motioned
Nobody has
an
made the
amendment.
amendment.
Can I propose an amendment then?
I think we have to do the motion on the table, then
No,
we can,
you can amend it.
only the person who made the motion.
No, anybody can amend
Oh,
it.
okay.
You can amend the motion that's on the table, and the vote will be made, correct, on the amendment first,
Yeah.
and then the motion.
If it's seconded.
What?
If it's seconded.
If it's second.
Right.
Okay. Did you say you wanted to make a motion to amend it?
I did.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
What's the amended motion?
Yeah, the amended
Yeah, what is the
motion
motion, sorry?
is to strike the removal requirement to register a turkey before taking another. And I don't know if this can be part of it, so you might have to stop me there, but as John mentioned, and I think New Hampshire originally followed this, not taking turkey in the same day.
It's an awfully long motion.
I don't disagree.
I hope you're not trying to write that word for word.
I can shorten it. I make a motion to strike the remove requirement to register a turkey before taking another. That's my motion.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Dave, what's the current law on turkey?
You're gonna have to speak.
Can I shoot 2 in 1 day?
Second.
You can take 2 in 1 day, they can register one before the other. And I would point out, right now, they can pull out their phone after the,
Right.
shoot the turkey, register it in 10 seconds. And then they can take it.
Okay, we have a amended motion to remove the requirement to register turkey before taking another.
Can we discuss the amendment now?
Yes.
Yes, we can. You can go first. No more than 2 questions.
Okay. I actually support and like Commissioner DeRosa's commentary about one bird in a day, because I think that would address, and would welcome Andy or Dan's feedback, and that would address the biological challenges of rushing to hurry up and fill out online so that they could shoot another.
So I guess it would, yes, it would cover that. Personally, I wonder if, that's a big change, going to one turkey a day, and I mean, that's your prerogative. I just wonder if that's too big a deviation without soliciting public comment. But yes, it would resolve the concern over rush registration.
Great, I believe the amendment on the floor just strikes, removes the requirement.
Correct.
So that means you will be able to register two birds, you'll be able to kill two birds in one day.
You will be able to kill 2 in one day, but my understanding
You're gonna
is
stop and
that
register.
you'll have to register the first one first, correct?
That's the existing language.
What?
We'll be reverting back to existing language.
My comment on it would be, I don't know what the big deal is between if you shoot a turkey, go have it registered, then come back for a second one. What's the hurry? Is the hurry from the hunter to shoot 2 turkeys at once?
No, I think the issue the department had originally is they were concerned about a hunter seeing a flock of birds, shooting a turkey. Now what they're gonna do is jump on their phone, and what the department's afraid of is the hunter is gonna be trying to rush through the registration process, make mistakes in the registration process, and then trying to get it done quickly before the birds leave the field. So the original intent of the department was thinking, see how we're moving to electronic registration, let's try to clean this up. Now, are we seeing those types of mistakes? Because we do have electronic registration now.
We do tend to see them in Turkey, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, they're jumping on the phone to register a turkey real quick. They don't have T-Mobile. I can tell you that. All right,
And, I guess it begs the question whether or not this will fix that, but that's one of our hopes.
Anybody else comment? Go ahead.
I appreciate Andy's comment and would agree with that. Probably that going to one bird a day is a pretty significant change without public comment. I don't know if there's, I think there's any more discussion on that.
Is that the motion though?
No, the motion,
Right.
the motion is just to,
Just for clarity.
yeah, just a clarity, but I had asked about.
The motion, the amended motion is to remove the requirement to register a turkey before taking another. That is the motion before you now. Any more comments? Not seeing none.
I'm sorry.
No,
So
no.
is it, I'm sorry, is it to remove the requirement or reinstate it?
It's to remove the requirement to register.
It's to strike that line.
before.
It's to strike that line.
Right, so
Am I correct?
you're striking the
He's
deletion.
asking the language, is all.
You're striking the deletion. It'll go to jail car with the requirement that you not take a second bird before you register the first.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not gonna change.
So reverting to the existing language.
In other words, leave it the way it is. How's that?
Love it.
Those in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed. Okay, let's put the vote in. Now, the original motion was to accept the turkey proposal as written, except now with the amendment. No other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
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 Three of you?
Yes. Because of the family. Aye, whatever. So we have opposed as Stoll, Green, and Price. So that motion passes. I think we're done with turkey, correct? I'm trying again. Next,
Please drink the water.
I think I'll just welcome you.
next category. Why don't we get to the end? Next category.
Small game. No proposed changes from the initial proposals that you saw, and really reflects the same season structure that we've had in place for small game for a long time. That covers small game.
Can I have a motion on small game?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to move to approve.
Second.
Price seconding. Discussion. You're not seeing any. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Beautiful, motion passes. Next one.
Fur. So, no proposed changes to the season structure and bag limit for eastern coyote, red fox, gray fox, and fisher. So no deviation from the initial proposals. Where we are suggesting a change is the ability for the department to approve courses related to the criteria for a level 2 WCO. So we are proposing pulling that proposal, which would revert back to the current. And that covers.
I have a question. On the WCO what? I have executive privilege. On the WCO education proposal, just so we're straight here, there will be no outsourcing now, correct?
So I'm gonna call on Pat.
The rule,
Spread the joy.
so you got this proposal, the rule would stay as written. The rule as it's written right now, which flows from 2003 to present, allows for taking the New Hampshire 6.5-hour course, having the Massachusetts HAP certification, or the Connecticut certification, or the National Wildlife Control Operators Association certification. That's how the rule is written currently. The amendment we had was to change all that, the way it's going to be written, and allow department approval. So we removed the department approval. The courses I just mentioned which would continue to be allowed, which have been allowed. 6.5-hour, Massachusetts, Connecticut, National Wildlife Control Operators Association.
All right, so just to remain perfectly clear, there's been no change this year now.
Correct.
Okay, we're not outsourcing. Okay,
If I may add part of the input that was,
don't confuse me.
I won't confuse you, but the issues brought up by the public and the questions that I received showed that the unclarity and misunderstandings, and it was going to create more issues for the agency and staff members as a whole to go to that amendment change. And therefore, discussion was pulled.
Anybody want to discuss that?
I have a question. Just one.
Okay, go ahead. What you want.
So there's 3 entities that we have reciprocity with, effectively. Do any of them have a CEU
No.
offering or requirement?
No.
Any more? There are none. The motion is to approve the small game. Those in favor?
No.
What? Sorry. For hearing proposals. Those in favor say aye.
Get a motion?
I didn't hear the motion.
We don't have one yet.
We need a motion first.
Then we got the motion. And that's what we just discussed.
You asked a question, not a motion.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'd like to offer an amendment at the appropriate time.
We'll do it now.
Okay. I would like to amend under the fur bearer season to align coyote hunting with that of red and gray fox. Currently, there's no closed season on coyotes. And what I am offering in this amendment is that the coyote hunting be in alignment with red and gray fox.
Okay, so an amendment has been made for fur bearer season to align with red and gray fox. Do we have a second?
I'll second this motion.
We have a second. Discussion. Nobody wants to discuss it?
Comment.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Cabley.
Again, listening, but also reaching out to constituency, talking with the public that represents a vast majority of the open space in New Hampshire and the activities of raising, caring, nurturing domestic animals. I'm not personally going to support Commissioner Temple's proposal of his amendment, and I just wanted to know, and I wanted it for the record, that again, I did my homework and reached out to a list of people, some of whom were not at any of our hearings. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Commissioner Hodgson?
I would like to hear from Andy or maybe Pat on that.
If we, as an agency or commission, chooses to alter the structure of management on eastern coyote, it's going to change the predation pressure on our white-tailed deer. Our white-tailed deer in the North Country, being at the northern edge of their range, could potentially see higher predation during the winter months and severe winters, which could affect deer populations at the northern edge of the range at a local level. Second to that, eastern coyote management isn't only about the population numbers, it's about the behavior of the animals. States that have significantly restricted seasons or harvest pressure on them tend to have higher conflict with humans. The public calls those attacks. I myself call them negative interactions because I don't know the ins and outs. The state of Connecticut a number of years ago shortened their coyote season, and within years, their conflicts went up. Rather than put it a full year season, they moved it to a 364-day season. So if we reduce our eastern coyote to a structure of red and gray fox, we run the potential of increasing predation on various prey species in the state and run the potential of increasing negative impacts to humans and also the agriculture community. The agriculture community, if during certain times of year, would have to go through a wildlife control operator, or they would have to go through a depredation permit through the department to work on issues of eastern coyote predation and that stuff. So there are complications to a management structure change, eastern coyote along with red fox and gray fox.
Okay, guys, go ahead, then I have a question.
Yeah. Well, during some previous discussions here about coyotes, I was pretty interested in, I think I asked the question as, what type of data do we have that significantly indicates eastern coyotes are taking deer? And I thought I understood, and perhaps I didn't understand correctly, I thought I understand is we don't really have any data on them. And then we followed up that question, as I recall, about how about coyotes taking livestock. And I think there was a case that happened in 2017, one case. So I'm saying to myself, well, that's not a problem with the agricultural community because they're going to get their permit to shoot a coyote or any other animal that's affecting livestock or in their crops or anything else. They have that ability to do that now. So for the next 2 years, which we're talking about here today, My thought is if we had this particular amendment, which limited the taking of coyotes to that of the red fox and gray fox, the department would have a fair amount of time to begin to collect and get data as to what they're talking about now, that is going to affect the white-tailed deer or it's going to affect agriculture, but without having some sort of restriction on the taking of coyotes, nothing's going to happen. Hasn't happened. You know, if you look at the slide that was given us, take per unit, what are we taking? Catch per unit, what, a couple of coyotes?
Without the data in front of me, I can't comment specifically what the numbers are. Some units are a few coyotes, depending on landowner access and what we're measuring trapping. And with this, you were talking about reducing trapping and hunting by putting eastern coyote with red fox.
No, I'm talking about hunting,
Okay, so hunting will...
specifically hunting. And as I read in the rule book, it's a hunting season, it's also a trapping season. What I'm talking about is the shooting of coyotes.
It's the hunting of coyotes.
Hunting of coyotes, excuse me.
My question is, we've got several geographical areas that would fall under consideration. You've got the north and the south. Is there, how much of a difference would it be if that season was changed in the southern part of the state versus in the north?
So because they're talking gradient difference of north to south and the difference in the weather patterns, the effect of altering the management structure on the seasons would be different between those regions. Is that answering your question, or is there something that you could repeat?
Yes, I'm trying to say, what difference would it make a major difference? You know, Commissioner Temple has talked about putting a season on the coyotes at the same time as the fox. What if you split that in the state? In other words, leave the seasons the way they are up north, but come down in the southern part of the state and put this season in place.
So put the reduced season...
And watch the data. I agree with Commissioner Temple.
So running the potential... No, I'm sorry.
I agree with Commissioner Temple on data.
So we do that, we run the potential of having increased negative interactions between humans and coyotes in the southern part of the state, and increased interactions between what would be classified as background agriculturists with their animals and coyotes. Is that potential going on there? We could go that road and we report the data over time and put the mandates on, which I have to reach out to Dan to provide his comments, because it'd be affecting his management of staff and how much time and money we're going to put in data reporting of those changes.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for us to speak to what the impacts would be, again, because we're not collecting information on hunter harvest of coyotes. So it would be pretty hard to speak to what the impacts would be. We might be able to look at information from other states that have similar seasons. I would say, I think it's fair to say that this is a pretty controversial topic. That it's a, yeah, this in general, that this is a pretty big deviation from the initial proposals, which really, you know, we present we present data on fur-bearing species, but we weren't proposing to change anything. So the initial proposals was just to keep status quo. This would be a pretty big deviation to do now, and I think this would require quite a bit of analysis by the department to figure out what potential impacts this may be. I would have questions as to whether or not this would impact our deer population. We certainly don't have evidence that they're being impacted now, but without knowing what hunting pressure is on coyotes, I think we'd be hard pressed to know.
I mean, I'm not worried, Dan, about hunting pressure. I look at the management of wildlife.
Yep.
I really do. And I'm looking at what would happen if we did this. Okay? I'm not doing this to please any groups.
Yep.
If we would do this, what would happen with, the coyote population? Would it explode? Would it create a problem? Would it not create a problem? Would we knock down deer?
Yeah, I
But I'm
think,
also willing to find out, seeing we don't have data, let's
Yeah.
find out what happens.
I think
We
that,
can stop it or we can begin it. You say 2 years, you can change back.
yeah, and I think that the only honest answer I can give you is we wouldn't know unless we tried, or we collected more data to try and get better information prior to implementing. But we can't speak to it right now because, quite frankly, we don't have any data that would kind of, we don't have any data that would lend itself to this decision currently.
One more question for myself. What is the red and gray fox season? I mean, are we talking this, 2 weeks?
I
The
believe
hunting
it's close to
season,
April 1st,
The what?
August 31st, right?
September 1st to March 31st.
September to March?
Yep.
seven months on, 5 months off.
So you want to close, basically you're saying you want to close coyote from September to October?
No,
Flip it,
From March to, from April 1st.
April
to
1st,
September
August 3rd.
April 4th.
1st. April 1st to August 30th.
I won't put that one. I have no more comments.
March.
Commissioner LaChance.
Whether you agree with creating a season or not for a coyote, every other potential rule change had a thorough vetting from the public, from the biologists. We've been talking about it for months. Now all of a sudden we're springing on a new rule change that we haven't heard from the biologists. They haven't been able to really tell us what they think, what they have. The public didn't have a chance to give input on this rule change. There was no written comments. I don't see how you just take a rule change like this and just put.
There has been comments on the coyotes.
Right, but not on this particular proposal, is what I'm saying. There's been on coyotes in general, but this particular proposal, like every other change in the rules, we've been talking about all along. And the public knew this is what the change that we're talking about making. Now we're talking about making an entirely different change that the public didn't have a chance to comment on, that the biologists didn't have a chance to get a comment. No one knew about it until today.
Commissioner Hutchins.
Policy.
I thought he said it right.
Chris. Thanks. So building on that comment, I think perhaps Eric and I are the only two, including the director, who were on the commission when we went through the Red Fox rulemaking 8 years ago at this point. And somewhat similar to this situation, there was a pretty significant change at the final rules adoption meeting that went to GELCAR, and it created a lot of controversy, and it resulted in GELCAR kicking back the rules package. And Marty, this predates you as well, but I would be concerned that we have deadlines associated with publication of the Hunting Digest. We have other seasons that are impacted by this particular rulemaking. And having lived through that experience, I don't know, Eric, help me, 8, 9 years ago?
2017.
No, it was earlier than that. 17, okay, so 6 years ago.
Trust me.
Yeah, I think I fall, on this matter, I fall on the side of let's tackle this issue outside of this rulemaking, because I don't want to be back here in a month or 6 weeks having to deal with GELCAR's rejection of it because of the process we undertook. And I think there's a reasonable chance of that, and I think that the impact of that is meaningful on the department's function. We ought to be careful about that. So my comment really isn't focused on the underlying issue. so much as I think this is not the right venue at the right time to tackle this question in the way that the motion is presented.
Commissioner Price?
Thank you. I actually have a question for the executive director. I'm hearing from staff that this is going to take additional resources. And we're in the appropriation period right now, and it sounds like this is the type of project that we might actually have to have an increase in appropriation. And it's kind of too late at that point. Is that your assessment?
Not 100%, but it's certainly not in our budget right now. Whether we could move money around in the budget, you know, back on another project, you know, repurpose money to this project, we have to sit down and take a look at that.
Okay, Commissioner LaChance.
I just want to say, Mr. Hodgman was able to much more eloquently say what I was trying to say. I agree with, it's the procedure that I have a problem with, not the change. Whether or not we're going to make a change, I think we can talk about that. But I think to just spring it at the last moment and rule change is not the right way to go about it.
Commissioner Stoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Temple, I gotta respectfully disagree with you. Aligning a killer coyote up with a red fox for hunt season is night and day. I have personally witnessed, I don't know if anybody else in the room has witnessed 3 different times white-tailed deer have been taken down by packs of coyotes. I have yet to see a deer be taken down by a red fox. I don't think it's capable. They are the most vicious killer we have out in those woods. And my very first hearing back in 2017, the head of a wildlife division come up and passionately argued in front of us, the commission, to close coyote season, taking a coyote during the pupping, the rearing time. It's in the summer sometime, I can't remember when it was. Very passionate about it. I argued, this is my first or second commission meeting I ever attended. I argued against that. The commission voted unanimously not to go on the recommendation of the leader of the game division. After that meeting, that leader of the game division came right up to my table, right up to me, right here, and said, "Thank you, Eric, for arguing with me. I didn't really support that." I'll tell you what, that didn't make me feel too good about possibilities of some of these recommendations coming forward. And I think Paul, you was there at that meeting. It was, anyway, I'll stop. Red fox and coyote, there's a big difference between them. And I'm totally opposed to opening this and closing any part of that season.
Commissioner Hodgson.
I agree with some of the comments about the process, so I respect Commissioner Temple for making a motion or proposing something that can cause a lot of different opinions. I think that takes a lot of courage. I respect that. I would like to discuss that. I'm open to discussing that. I don't have enough information. I think, you know, Dan and Andy and Pat have tried to respond on the spot, but I also don't want to kick the can without coming back to it either. So Commissioner Hodgson said, well, let's take this out or take this discussion separately. But if we agree to do that, then I want to do that, right? I don't want to kick the can. I want data on what is the consequence of doing that. I hear Commissioner Stoll's personal accounts, but I want to see the data. The other question relative to that is there not modeling, which is far beyond my abilities, right? If they're not modeling that says if you take out this is how your population changes in this, again, something far beyond my abilities, where we can look at facts and data and models to take out 5 months, take out 3 months, take out 2 months, take out 1 month, and understand to take out and shut the season down for 5 months without a better understanding especially in southern parts of the state where there is a lot of risk for negative human interactions. I would be concerned about 5 months, but I don't want to kick the can. So I guess my ask is, if we're going to talk about this, I want to make sure that we follow up on it and that we aren't kicking the can. I hear about there's no data to support that, but we haven't made any efforts either to collect more data to support that. So that's my
And Commissioner DeVoe.
We have a game camera study going on right now for fur bearers. When do we think, 2 years, 3 years, is that coming up? Any analysis of that soon?
Yeah, so I mean, that'll be an alternative index to the population. It wouldn't really lend any information as to what the impacts would be of changing the length of the hunting season.
But my point would be, we're managing fur bearers in the state with our hand tied behind our back. We're not managing bobcats at all. And there's going to be this question, are they affecting the foxes? A lot of guys in the woods think they're killing the fisher. So now we're going to now we want to protect the coyote more, which trappers will tell you kill foxes. So we've got this chain here where we're not even managing one fur bearer, and now we're going to start to protect another. The foxes and fish are getting hammered. And so I would like to see a survey for the coyote hunters in the next few years, where we have 2 years to collect some surveys from hunters on killing coyotes. And I want to see a bobcat season in 2025.
One brief thing. Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Stoll. About 2 weeks ago, less than a mile from my house, on a major hiking trail by the Castle in the Clouds, we came up on, our dogs and I, and my wife, the remains of a deer after it had been ravaged by a pack of coyotes. I circulated the video I took to a few commissioners. I didn't do it to everyone because of the quorum rule. Anybody that wants to see it, it's on my Facebook page. There was nothing but fur left. That was it. The contents of the stomach, which they typically do not eat. They ate all the entrails. There were no bones except the jawbone that one of my dogs found. And it was a doe, and likely carrying a fawn, given the time of year. They are efficient killers. They do not have a moral compass. They're not domestic canines. And if anyone would like to see what a coyote does to a deer when they take it down, go to my Facebook page. It's there. Thank you.
I don't think anybody here is arguing how horrible coyotes killing deer are. I've seen it plenty in my life. That's what they do. That's nature. I don't think, for us to think we're going to instill a moral compass in them is crazy, but also eradication policy is not management. Not gathering the proper intel. I agree with Paul that there needs to be consistency across all predators. But I do think eradication of coyotes is not. But I also agree with Eric that the North Country is not the same as the rest of the state. And I would argue that that's a lot to do with habitat, and that the deer don't have the proper habitat to be able to evade predators correctly and whatnot in those environments. But as a bird hunter, I could sit here and argue the opposite of deer hunters, which is that more coyotes eat more ground nesting predators, which increases the grouse population. I think that both those points, the fact that they cruelly kill deer, which is just nature, I don't think it's even part of the argument. And if I'm a grouse hunter, it's also my benefit. It should just be, what does the ecology say? What is more beneficial to the overall environment? And I think it's consistency in predator management, consistency in us getting data, and I think just a straight eradication policy. Mind you, they're a non-native species, as we know, but they do replace the significance of our lack of wolves. So, I mean, I'm still on board with Bruce that I believe that we need to change some things here, because I think people have this whole subject, at least for what I feel, because I've asked a lot of questions about this to a lot of people, as everybody knows about this over the past few months, and I feel like ultimately maybe it fell on deaf ears. So I can understand Bruce's frustration to even bring this up, but I also don't disagree, Chris, that this is pretty abrupt. But a lot of people have been asking for this. So and I don't know to Megan's point, if we don't pass this, can we even do anything now? Or this can't be opened again until 2 years? You know, is that the case? Or is there gonna be no follow? I mean, I just think there's a whole slew of problems. This is a can of worms, this is Pandora's box here. But, again, maybe, you know, I don't disagree with Eric that, you know, seeing some more deer get run down up in an area where the deer really can't get away by coyotes is a problem. But, hey, where I live in Stratford County, yeah, we could use some more deer getting killed.
Okay, we've had, Bruce, I'm gonna let you be the last one.
Oh,
Just getting
no,
there. Go ahead.
Oh, if I am this one. As we've gone to our meetings here in Concord, Keene, I was not able to make Lancaster, but I'm sure you had a good turnout in Lancaster. What really have we heard from the public?
What have we heard?
Yeah.
Well, you've gotten the same comment sheets we've gotten. Correct?
Yeah. So by offering this amendment, what I was trying to do, and I'll continue to try to do, is if we offer this amendment, where we limit the season for the next 2 years, it gives the department an opportunity to begin to collect the data that we need. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, any
This
more
rule
comment?
can be changed in 2 years from now.
Any
Or
more?
if it becomes a problem across the state, it can come back here and be dealt with.
Can I add one little bit?
Go ahead.
Please. Bruce, your intentions are good, but there's no reporting right now on hunting coyote. So we will collect no data unless we ask the department to figure out how to collect data for a hunting season where there's no daily limit, and that is so long. What was the other thing I was going to say?
Gotta pay for it.
I guess, does that mean you're done? Commissioner Hodgson, you had your hand up.
Clarification on process. So Commissioner DeRosa mentioned if we don't support that amendment now, that doesn't mean that we can't talk about it and put through rule changes at any given point. We don't have to wait 2 years, so no.
Okay.
So I just want to make that final comment here. If we don't proceed with forcing the issue, if you will, about coyote hunting, I can almost rest assured that we review these rules again in 2025, we will still not have data.
Okay.
I just got a gut feeling. I know budgets are tight. We've got other priorities that we're working on that are significant for fish and wildlife around the state of New Hampshire. But I can almost bet that we won't have data, statistic data, facts, models. It's an effort.
The hunters would be willing to donate money to study coyotes.
All right, we're not making.
Or maybe some other groups.
So, anyway, I presented what I thought was a reasonable approach.
I think we've heard enough discussion on this. The amendment, we'll go on the amended motion. That's what I'm getting ready to do. I'd like to say what the amendment is. The amendment was made to take the fur-bearing season for coyotes and put it in line with the red-gray fox. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Please raise your hand.
All right,
I need you to read them to me, Ray.
let's do a roll call. I can't count all the hands at once on both directions.
Commissioner DeVoe, no.
Temple votes yes.
Kevin, no.
Temple was what?
Yes.
Haven, no.
Stoll, no.
Hodgson, no.
I'm no.
Hodgins, no.
The other agent, no.
Mark?
Mark?
No. Well, chance, no.
DeRosa's a yes.
President.
What?
No.
No, have it. Motion does not pass.
Mr. Chairman?
What?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Is it possible to make a motion to initiate data collection and further research into that?
I'm not sure.
I don't know if we can do that under rulemaking. That would come under regular commission meeting.
Okay.
Maybe when we're done, you can make that. I'd like to get through rulemaking, still have legislation to go through. I don't know who's ready to order dinner. That motion fails. Now you go back to the motion for Rivera proposals. Time to get full. Those in favor of accepting the Rivera proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I think it's just easy to, me and Bruce be the only no's.
Thank
Who
you.
was the no's?
AJ and Bruce?
Okay. The motion passed. Next subject, Dan. Gotta be ready to order pizza.
A drink to go with it.
Yeah.
Is that it for the rulemaking?
Yep, that was it.
We're done on that. Financial statement. Take a look at that email.
No, it's in
No,
front
it's
of
in
you.
my packet.
Seeing I can't answer, anybody got questions on it? I didn't think so. Legislature committee.
Thank you. We met this morning at 9 o'clock. We had a quorum. We only discussed two bills. We had vigorous discussion on the lobster diving bill. And at this point, we have not changed our position. We are still opposed. And we are awaiting additional input from the executive director and staff on the current status of a possible amendment that we might see soon. We also discussed the biodiversity bill, Senate Bill 164. We maintained our position of opposed, but we do expect some changed language at the next hearing later this week. We had a motion to adopt the proposed fishing rules with a correction that was noted by Commissioner Stoll. So he motioned to correct 406.07 wild trout waters, delete number 5 to conform with the proposed rule change at 402.09 to allow 24-hour fishing for trout species. The committee passed this unanimously 4-0. And I make a motion that the full commission confirm the acceptance of the fishing rules as proposed with this correction.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion been made and second. Those in favor?
Can you just read the amendment? Which 402 what?
It was, okay, so what happened was they changed 402.09 to allow 24-hour fishing for trout species, but forgot to delete 406.07 under wild trout waters. That was number 5 that they would compete against each other. So 5 under wild trout waters would constrain the fishing hours.
In the version that you have in front of you today, that has been addressed, I think Commissioner
Yes.
Stoll was referring to a version that went out in March.
Yes, and Scott, we figured that out, but because that was the only version we had to vote on it. You know what I'm saying, at that point in front of us. So we do know that Scott, because he brought his computer up and all, but, so we did make a formal change on that, so. That good, Chris?
Yeah, what threw me was that it's 5 is deleted in the document we got today. That was the
Yeah,
intention.
but the one we got in the mail was not, and that's the one that the committee had to vote on. So, call vote to accept the rules.
Discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. Those in favor of accepting the FIS, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The FIS all say.
Our last-
Any others?
Our last item we voted on was, you'll recall that Commissioner Stoll did exhaustive research on the Commission's authority over rulemaking. The Legislative Committee voted 4-0 in favor of accepting his analysis and moving forward as a commission that we have rulemaking authority over the Fish and Game Department.
Okay,
Okay, follow that?
is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Commissioner Stoll, would you like to?
No discussion?
We
So-
had a big discussion the last meeting.
I think we've discussed it a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
With no discussion, those in favor say aye.
Can I request that the commission have a discussion with Chris Aslam? Because I think Chris has got a very different legal opinion on where rulemaking fits into legislative branch versus administrative branch.
My question would be, this came out in the last commissioners meeting.
Yeah.
I believe you brought these documents.
Yep.
Have you had a conversation with Chris Aslam since then?
I had him before that. That's what's basing my statement that I think he would like to.
My thing is, I think we've had over a month to wait for a response from Chris Aslam if he had one. And we haven't had a response.
I guess I wasn't expecting a vote.
Okay, well, there's a vote on the table. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
One opposed, motion passes. Do you have anything else?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Governance Committee,
Nothing to report.
Sustainability and Strategic Planning.
So the letters that we talked about getting out to the different stakeholder groups are in flight. The staff one's out, the one to elected officials is out. The one that will go out via mails take a little longer because the database needs some work, but Tanya and I are working on it, and it'll be done quick. So that's our update. And the request is, response is back by May 26th.
My question on it would be, did we get copies of all the questions and stuff that you wanted to send out
Yeah, at the last meeting, at the February meeting.
in the February meeting?
Yep, I can resend it to everybody. Yeah, sure. We're in the minutes.
I just want to make sure that all correspondence sent out by the commission is approved by the commission. Anything else, Chris?
Nope.
Resource and infrastructure, Commissioner Temple.
Nothing to report, I'm sure.
Okay, public engagement and education, Commissioner DeWilson.
Nothing to report.
Lakes Management Advisory Committee.
We have not had a meeting since the March meeting that I previously reported on.
Nothing to report. New Hampshire Rivers Management Advisory Committee, Commissioner Hodgson.
Yep, so the RMAC met on April 10th, and the purpose of the meeting was to take positions on legislation that had changed at crossover, and there were two, none of them were on the commission's watch list. The other item that was discussed at the meeting is that there's been an effort ongoing between UNH and DOT to develop a viewer that allows either agencies or the public to see all public lands and how those public lands relate to water bodies, physical infrastructure like highways. And the purpose of that is you all may be familiar with the fact that there's a mechanism in New Hampshire to dispose of surplus land, and surplus land adjacent to a water body, a river, goes to the RMAC for approval. And whenever we had, they're often very small pieces of property, 1/8 of an acre here, 1/4 of an acre there, often adjacent to the right of way between a road and a river. And it was impossible to look at them in the context of all state-owned lands. We were looking at tiny little parcels that weren't related to anything else. So this viewer should give the Rivers Management Advisory Committee and then the public the ability to do that now, so that we can understand how they relate to other state-owned pieces of land. So that was a big part of the meeting, reviewing it, and as I attended along with John McGee, who's provided support for the department as well.
Thank you. Any old business?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, with respect to land, what you're talking about, does that affect wild goose in any way?
So if, so when an agency wants to dispose of land that it owns, it has to go to the court process. If that piece of land is within 250 feet of a river, I don't believe the same authority extends to lakes, but you can check.
The riparian zone?
No, the requirement that the advisory committee approve disposition of land, I believe it only applies to rivers. There's a quirk in the way the two advisory committees are set up, that Rivers has, I think, more expansive legal authority or obligation. So I can check on that, or Susan and I can check with DES on that. But certainly if it's a river, then this entity, the advisory committee, has to approve it. It's sale. They can put qualifications on it if they want, and then it goes to court for the final process.
Thank you.
So I'll follow up.
I can check on it too.
Okay, now anything under old business? I'm not sure, this old business? Yeah.
I don't know. We discussed it in the legislative committee. As far as I've heard in the legislative committee, nobody's got a result back on that petition.
Right, I'm going to call it old business. On March 27th, the Hampshire Wildlife Coalition, this is a question for the director. The Hampshire Wildlife Coalition put in a rulemaking petition to close the season regarding taking the coyotes by firearms, crossbow, bow and arrow from April 1st to August 31st. The legislature committee and some commissions are requesting what's the status on that.
My wildlife division asked to wait until after today's meeting before they work to give me a recommendation. So we'll be working on that this week.
Okay, does anybody got any questions on this other than, I guess my question is, when did they get an answer?
They have to have one within 30 days, so it'll be within, April 27th, April 26th.
Okay. And will we be getting informed of that decision?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have?
Yeah, I mean, what's it going to take to get a decision? I mean, can you make a decision right now?
I'll wait to get input from my staff.
Okay, I got it.
It just hit us at a rough time when that particular division was busy with their rulemaking process, that's all. Normally, we've tried to get them out a little quicker.
Does anybody, hey guys, anybody have any questions on that? Okay, go ahead.
Kind of, and it's related to my question anytime I say new business.
Well, if we don't take it now, next is new business.
Okay, what a perfect transition. When we wrapped up the coyote discussion, Commissioner Temple said we'll probably get to rulemaking in '25 and we'll still have no data. And I think we have the ability to influence and change that. So I did not support his amendment. I am not one to make quick and emotional decisions, but I think, going back to my comment before, I want to see data supporting or not supporting 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month. What is the impact? What would the impact be if that was done? And I would like to follow through with a greater discussion amongst the commission on that. Part of the discussion is we don't have data, but I have not seen an effort to collect the data. So what would a proposal, or what would a way to collect data look like?
Okay, so put the question to wildlife on whether we have a motion or anything. Help me out here, what are you looking for?
Is it emotions?
I think Pat actually referenced an answer early on, is that to stand here and give you a plan is probably not a wise idea. So the
100% agree, so that's what I'm
the
asking.
specifics of it, yeah.
I want a plan, and I want to know how much time does that take, but I don't want to.
And what we'll be
kick the
looking
can.
at, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Do I need to make a?
Yeah.
I'm happy to make a motion, or if that's, hey, director, is that something that we can ask staff to follow up on? I'm happy to follow whatever procedural process we need to.
I think we are starting to work towards that goal. So give us some time and we will, so the next thing we'll do is we're gonna respond to the petition. And then what Dan and I have talked about is to try to come up with a plan on doing more research around coyote.
Yeah, and I'll just say, there's been a lot of internal discussion about this. Obviously, there's a lot of different input from different groups. So, you know, we want to make sure we take our time with this and get as much information as we can. You know, I can't speak. It depends on the questions that are being asked, the type of information that we need to collect. You know, I'd be hard pressed to tell you that we could pull together information that would specifically tell you what the impacts are going to be for a 5-month, 3-month. Like, we just wouldn't be able to get that. But that's not to say that there's not other information we can look at and not have more in-depth discussion on this. Because of everything that's been going on, all the petitions that we've been getting, the rulemaking process, that's kind of why we've been holding off on responding to this particular one. Obviously, there was quite a bit of discussion within the commission even just today on it, so we want to make sure we take our time with this. But you know, it'll depend, I guess, is the answer on what kind of information we collect, and we want to have some discussions internally on, you know, what can we gather now, what new systems can we put in place, how much money is that going to take, how much staff time is that going to take, you know, on top of everything else that we're doing. And again, all important stuff to ask, but it's going to take some fleshing out.
Yep.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yep.
And I know, I'm hoping I'm going in line with what Commissioner Hudson is asking. I've been on this commission now 4.5 years. I was here before Mr. Mason became a director. I was here before you became a head of wildlife, so this doesn't fall on either one of you. This question was asked over 5 years ago. Then it was asked again 4 years ago on getting accurate data, and Fish and Game has done nothing about it, coming up with any accurate data. But I want to make myself clear, this isn't under Director Mason or you. I mean, this is under another director and another head of wildlife. Been 4.5 years. How much longer? I think the people asking the questions have been hearing the same answer for close to 5 years. I know I have. I don't know how long it's been asked prior to that. 5 years I've heard the same answer. Now, you have a study going on with New Hampshire, with UNH, correct?
Yeah, so that would be an alternative index to different fur species.
And that started a year ago, correct?
Roughly, the pilot study was a little prior to that. The other thing, and this kind of plays into this, we have limited staff, we have limited resources. We're also starting to initiate a study, or we're trying to initiate a study on a cause-specific mortality study on fisher, which is a species that's seen declines over time. Coyotes has not been a priority management-wise because our information indicates that their population's been stable long-term. So that's kind of part of this, where are we putting our resources and our staff time? We, again, broad-scale stuff for all fur-bearing species, cause-specific mortality for fisher because we've seen declines. Again, not to say that we're not interested in coyote, but we have to choose where to put our staff and our resources based on what we have available to us. So again, it's difficult to make those decisions.
Which I get that, Dan. On that UNH study, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we were told back then it was going to take about 2 years before data started to come in?
Let me speak. So the camera study is 2 different studies, so we got to straighten that out. L&M was the first study. I was going to see the performance, how that worked out. And then that came back to the department. It was going along the satisfactory lines, came back to the option to expand statewide in combination with news research, which we did. So that statewide portion is now, deadline to wrap up is around 2026. So that's a ways out for the statewide portion. The L&M portions should be wrapping up soon. Have you heard more from them?
I haven't gotten it.
So I've done one PR report on it, and it's not the final, so that's not finalized. One other aspect I'd like to say about, with wildlife management, it's a lot like predicting the weather. So there is no electrical engineering or civil engineering type design that you can sit and say, if we do X, Y, Z, we're 100% accurate, this is going to be the result. We can get a grayness and a pretty confident understanding of what the results should be. So number of this data, we can provide data and do the surveys for the number of animals killed and all that aspect of it. But if someone comes to us and says, we want a computer model that tells us if we kill 500 animals, what the outcome is going to be on the other end, wildlife biology does not have that power to do that. This has been an age-long debate. When I was an undergraduate, it was a debate. When I was a master's student, it was a debate. And if you go through the history of reading about wildlife management, it's been a debate since the field was started. There's a number of things wildlife biologists argue about theory, and critics of the agency and some of the stuff that's going back and forth in front of the commission here is us, without arguing with each other, arguing to you about theory. And that's creating some cloud, I think, because the commission, not having been in these classes that we've all been in, don't see what's going on. And it's tit for tat to gain superiority of how to manage species on theory. So, and then the commission sees it as, we need a model. Well, the model is never going to clarify what theory is.
I don't think the commission's looking for a model, Pat. I think what the commission is looking for is what the public is looking for is, instead of saying we have no data, we have no data, we have no data, what are the results of these studies? I'm not asking for you to click a button and you're going to tell us how many coyotes we have in a certain month.
Raymond, if you give me a minute, Pat. Pat, I'm thinking that, going back to your graphs, each data point is 3 years, right?
Over.
Right, that's what we're talking about. Well, no, fur bearers.
Trapping of the fur-bearing species on there, it's trapping data.
Okay, it's trapping data only. But what I'm getting at is that each one of these is a 3 year. So 3 years of camera study is a dot.
Yep.
That's not a graph, it's just a dot.
And I agree
So
with
we're
that.
probably going to be looking at 10 years 12 years of camera data
Yeah, so
before we really get a handle on how that will be. So unfortunately, we are caught in a point where we think that this camera data study is a better way to predict population up and down, but it's gonna take us 10, 12 years, maybe longer, so that we can go back and forth and understand what we're looking at.
So to add what the director's saying, that's true. The camera trap data is a larger data set. Larger data sets give you more information, give you more statistical power and prediction of what you're measuring and what is true. And the camera trap data set is to also look at the function of the capture per unit effort data, and are they tracking similar? So capture per unit effort is a lower power data set because there's lower effort. The camera trap has a higher effort, higher power, and are they tracking along similar? So at a point in time, you can say, okay, we can correlate those and say that the capture per unit effort is a low-cost data set that is favorable to
Right,
measure.
so what I'm
these
trying to get
numbers.
at is, for example, you made a statement, L&M, you're
Yep.
almost done with that
Right.
study for a year.
Right.
Okay, hear me out here for a minute. I get what Director Mason has said. Hey, 10 years of dots.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first year of a dot. Give that dot to the commission.
Okay.
Give that dot to the public. So next year, when you get another dot, we
So-
can start to get an idea going on, not turning around saying to this commission, in 10 years, you may get some info. Or to the public, in 10 years, you may get some info.
Yeah,
Our job's to manage wildlife, not waiting 10 years for info to manage.
people just need to understand what that information means.
I think most people do understand that, Dan. They're looking
Yeah.
for some info. That's all. If anybody wants to turn around and say, hey, that one dot means we should turn around and do this and bang their fist, I won't listen to them. Well, let's start getting the info out. That's all I'm asking. I'm not looking for, give me the
So
exact number of coyotes.
I understand now.
Nobody can get that. Commissioner Hodgson.
I think my point might be slightly not completely understood. I understand the trapper data, I understand the camera study. This is multifaceted, right? This is, to your point, you can't push a button and get an answer. So I think Commissioner Temple said something about in 2017 there was a livestock issue. Okay, I know there's livestock issues all the time, but there's missing data here, right? There's missing data here. I want to understand, as part of this, what is the data that does or doesn't support closing that season for a period of time. Also, with that, there's a literature review, what's going on in Connecticut or Mass, looking at it from all different angles to put the case down on the table and say, yes, that makes good sense for the collective management, or no, that doesn't make good sense, but there is data from all facets, and then there's this gray space that says, you know what, wow, we don't have this piece here. So in order to do this, we need $1 million and we need three head count. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not just CPUE data and a camera study. Like it's way bigger, right? And that's what I want.
And that's, and therein lies some of the issues. Because again, we have limited staff and we try to prioritize things. And again, our current priority was Fisher, which is why we were trying to get this study going. We can look more into coyotes, but coyotes is a species that our current data suggests has had a stable population. So we could certainly look into it further. I think it's warranted that we do look into it further, but...
But put that on a, like, this is what we need, this is what we have, this is what it takes, so there needs to be a prioritization, right? Like, I think it's just helping get that in black and white, right? I don't expect you're gonna have this by the next commission meeting, right? So I understand that really loud and clear. But what I don't think we have done collectively in a good way is why is it a no? Why is it a no, right? And I think if it's a no, we all need to be on the same page and we need to understand Why? Otherwise, we just keep kicking the can, and then to Commissioner Timmons' point, it's gonna be 2025, we're gonna be having the same meeting, and we're gonna have the same discussion, and we have not done anything further. So it was a little bit bigger than that. Thank you.
I think what I'd like is if the commission would give us some time for staff to meet and discuss this, come up with a plan, and we'll present a plan. It may take us a couple of months before we're ready to present the plan, but we'll present a plan to the commission.
Can we make a commitment on that? Is that before the end of the
That
year?
is a commitment.
Is that before the end of the year?
Yes, it'd definitely be, but I'm hoping for it to be much quicker.
Thank you.
I think that's concrete enough.
Yep. Thank you.
Any more under old business slash, now you have new business? Any more new business?
I disappointed
Not-
Commissioner Stoll last time.
What?
I disappointed Commissioner Stoll last time, I didn't say much.
You disappointed Mr. Stoll left?
Last time I didn't say much, so I'm just making up for
She's
it.
making up
this-
for
All right, anyways, commissioner reports.
You know I always have a commissioner report.
I didn't call on you yet. Does anybody on this side of the table have a commissioner's report they'd like to say that's really important? I didn't think so. On this side, anybody got anything really important?
Oh, I think so. Thank you. We had a very successful search and rescue presentation at the Molten World Library. The Colonel, through Joe Canfield, sent a couple of the officers, including K-9 Officer Winnie. She was the third officer. And Kim Lesniewski with Lakes Region Search and Rescue gave a very good presentation. We had so much interaction. We went well over our hour and a half out allotted time. And the adult ed coordinator at the library asked us back later this summer when the away people come. I met with the Ossipee Conservation Commission last Wednesday because I began getting a flurry of calls about development on Big Dam Pond. So, and Steve Anger and I have been coordinating. We're very concerned about the impact to lake trout. So, and then Nicola is here to accept, get it back here. I am donating.
Now I know I have
I am donating this .50 caliber compact model muzzleloader for the raffle for the Becoming an Outdoor Woman program this fall. So it does not require the federal license transfer. So that made it very easy to purchase and have it delivered UPS. But we believe this will increase raffle sales because people actually see what they're going to win. So, and this is a compact model, shorter length of pole for women. So nobody likes having their bicep crushed. Just click it, it'll go back.
Very nice.
And I encourage you to make any donations to the program.
For me?
Yeah, anyone in the room. It sells out quickly, we get good positive feedback, and it's also in Moltenboro, so it's easy for me to go to. AJ and I went to it last year. It's Christmas in April.
Well, call Bernie for a donation. Is that it?
I'm done, thank you.
God sake. By the way, that was very nice, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Director's report.
I do apologize. When we tried to print off some of our information, it would not print. So you guys all got a map today and a letter from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They are in the process of looking at an easement purchase in Sullivan County, and it's gonna be called the Bear Hill Conservancy. It is totally, it'll be just shy of 15,000 acres. This easement purchase is 11.8, I believe. And this will be part of the the Silvio Conte Wildlife Refuge. I assume everybody realizes that is the Connecticut River, and any Connecticut River Valley, including its tributaries, from the onset in Pittsburgh all the way to Long Island Sound. This is a pretty substantial increase in the holdings that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have. They're going to be using, what they're asking us to do, and what they're asking me to do is to support this purchase with migratory bird fund money. So that'll be off the duck stamp program. And I just wanted to make the commissioners aware of it. And I do apologize. We tried to print off 2 booklets that really kind of explain this, and when Tanya printed them, they ended up being like 1/4-inch square. So I'm not sure. So we've sent them to you on an email. I hope everybody can open up that format when it gets to you. But we have sent you those 2 booklets that what's the name of the conservation group that's putting this together? They're out of Florida.
So the landowner that owns the property is Dave Roby, who recently got one of the Commission Awards of Excellence. He's put together the Bear Hill Conservancy Trust, and so he's a private landowner working with Fish and Wildlife Service. He hired a company that specializes in kind of land deals. I don't recall their name offhand, but they're more of a contractor that he's working with to kind of help with the deal. But it's a private landowner, Dave Roby, who owns the property.
So, did you say this was Sullivan County?
Yes.
No,
I apologize, Grafton.
Yeah, because that Bear Hill is Lyme.
Yeah, it's Lyme,
Large-
Dorchester.
Yeah, most of it's in Lyme and Dorchester.
Yeah. So it's just above Dartmouth.
So U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is purchasing it?
Yes.
They'll have
The easement.
the management rights under the easement. The Bear Hill Conservancy Trust will have the easement.
No, the trust of the easement or the land?
I believe the easement and the Fish and Wildlife Service has management rights.
Scott, is this land going to be open to hunting?
Yes.
Yes, that is the thing. What happens is, and I may be a little rusty as far as this because this is an easement property instead of a fee property, is they shut everything down to begin with, and then they write management plans. So until the management plan gets written, an activity may not be allowed. So and they have these plans on. They have major, minor plans. So like for example, the Umbagog Wildlife Refuge has written their hunting plan. So they allow hunting on the refuge, but they have yet to write the trapping plan, and that's why trapping's not allowed on that refuge yet.
So I have a question, if I can, if I'm not out of order. With respect to this, is there any part of any public vetting process, or is this just being done between Roby and the vet?
It would not. It's not up to us to do the public vetting process. That would be a federal issue. Whether or not they have, I'm not familiar enough.
I don't know specifically.
Didn't you say?
Yeah, because you just had these bought in your property.
No.
Yeah, they have a public vetting process, but my town, they took a bunch of land from my town, and I'm a selectman, so I'm quite cautious of the fact that they don't pay taxes for it. Yeah, but we had to go all the way over to St. Johnsburg, Vermont to the vetting process. They didn't have one in New Hampshire. They didn't know that they'd taken the land in New Hampshire.
So this isn't costing Fish and Game?
Yeah, so they're not asking the department for money. They're applying for money from the migratory. There's migratory waterfowl funds they're federal funds that are available. So no Fish and Game money is going into this at all.
So the federal duck stamp money purchases this land, but it gets closed until there's a management plan written. So if there's duck hunters that are hunting this now,
they'll be gated.
I'm not 100% sure because this is an easement property versus a fee property. On a fee
Will we
property,
get more
yes.
information later?
We'll probably be getting some as we go forward.
So they bought the land, correct?
They're in the process, right, or the easement.
Yeah, they're in the process of obtaining funds to get the
Do
easement.
they have to get an AOA on this?
Say what?
I don't want to AOA permits, I think.
What?
AOT? No, they're not looking to
They're not
develop
disturbing
anything or, yeah, no.
Anything else? Yes, Mr. Stoll.
Missed it, all right.
Oh, you're over there,
Have we got an update on the dive-in for Lobsterville? Where is it, what's going on?
I got a little briefing on it, I'll let Marty give it.
They reconvened the hearing last Tuesday, and Representative Greg Hill brought forward an amendment at the hearing that he claims would address all of Fish and Game's concerns. He did not check with us before he made that claim. The feeling at the reconvened hearing of Senator Avar, the chair of the committee, was not allowing the committee members to ask any questions. So he just wanted to get through all of the testimony. I spoke with Grant Bossy, who is the policy director for the Senate Republicans. He happened to run into him, and he asked me what was I doing there, and I said I was there for that bill, and he said, yeah, that's not going anywhere. We need to take care of the lobstering. So
That sounds pretty good to me.
that's the feeling, and the feeling within the committee was that they were allowing the testimony, but that it was not expected to. At the most, it may be re-referred to committee for further study, but I don't expect it will come out of committee with a recommendation of what to pass.
Thank you, Marty.
It has not been accepted at this point.
Okay, the only thing I'd like to add is with Jim coming on, I hope you've enjoyed your day here.
Slice of heaven.
It's gonna get better. Next month, when you show up, Jim, as you know, we have 8 committees. Expect to get placed on 6 or 7.
The new guy brings
That's the rookie thing?
No, it's not a rookie thing. It's a,
Welcome to the commission.
what I'll be asking is the committees, if you're looking for some extra help on it, I think, John, you may need somebody. Put your requests in where you'd like Jim to go on a committee. Okay? Because I'll be making those decisions next month. And they change some,
Can I make another comment?
Sure.
I can't believe that we would ever close this meeting and go out the door without someone making a comment, unless I missed it, about the event that was here on Saturday. It was outstanding. And the time I spent here engaging in young families with little buggers in hand, totally taken by everything that they saw, to everyone that was engaged in the process, directing traffic, setting up booths, manning tables, just being there with a smile on their face to greet the crowd. I can't thank you enough. I was just really pleased to be able to just walk around with a shirt on and have people think that I had something to do with it. So I know that it was a big hit, so thank you. So everyone at New Hampshire Fishing Game.
and you only let me have one hot dog.
Looking out for you.
No, Mark's the next one, so on that thing. If anybody's got anything else, call them the public. Okay, instant. He went behind you first, sorry.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Hodgson and...
Name and where you're from.
Oh, Steve Andrews, Conway, sorry, I feel like a fixture here.
Remember, there's people here that don't know you.
Commissioner Hodgson and Commissioner Stoll reminded me that I've been coming here for 7 years now because I was here before they were here, so. But I just would like to comment to this commission. You all know that I'm the chair of the Trout Management Committee for Trout Unlimited. And when we want change within this department and with this commission, we go to the department heads. We find out what the department heads need, and we go raise the money or volunteer the hours to get the data that all of you need to make these decisions, okay? We don't come to you and say, we want stocking stocked here, just because we feel like stocking over wild trout shouldn't happen. We meet with that woman right there, and we develop a plan. And if she needs money to make it happen, we go raise the money to make it happen. And that's why we're successful when we come in front of this commission. You will never get a petition from Trout Unlimited without data from inland fisheries to back up that petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Is it my turn?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can I talk from here?
Well, I don't want you up here hitting me. We're from there.
Okay. So I'm Chris Schaefer from Webster. So, of course, you know that I'm really sad right now. But I'm also kind of frustrated because I thought that if I got the petition in on time, that it would be distributed to all of the commissioners before now. And it's shocking to me. No wonder Mr. LaChance thought that this thing was coming up all of a sudden, if you hadn't known about it before today. Am I right in understanding that somehow the paperwork got held up somewhere?
No, you're not right. On your petition, hopefully I'm right. On your petition, there's an RSA that says it's the director's authority to shorten the existing season, to shorten or expand it.
Mm-hmm.
The commission's authority is to either open or close a authority. Okay?
Okay.
If you give me 20 minutes or less whenever we get done here, I'll show you the RSA.
So I was wrong in bringing this to the commission?
Yes.
So it's entirely,
What the commission did for you today is we're pushing for an answer for you.
is what?
Pushing for an answer for you.
Oh, in data gathering.
A what?
In data gathering?
Not data gathering, an answer.
From Mason.
In other words, we were pushing the director to give an answer
To your petition.
to your petition.
Okay.
Didn't you recently put in a petition from Voice of the Wildlife?
No.
Oh,
New Hampshire
okay.
Wildlife
I'm thinking somebody else. I'm sorry, I'm wrong.
No, you're
Well, she
right,
did-
Ray.
you're right.
She also
Am
put
I
in
right
a
or wrong?
petition.
You're confusing two different.
You're right, you mentioned the wrong, the name of the wrong group.
Okay.
But
She's the
she
Hampshire
put in a
Wildlife
petition.
Coalition.
That a long day.
It doesn't fall under our authority, it's just the executive director.
It's right here. Okay, that is new.
From the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition that was put on May 27th. That was what I hit them with today. And that petition was to shorten coyote season, correct?
Right.
Our authority is either open or close.
So.
His authority is to shorten or lengthen.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay,
So
so.
we're working on authorities. If you didn't get the general message here today, I don't know how to tell you. We're working on this stuff.
Well, I was glad to see conversation on it. I was disappointed that there were 19th century attitudes about coyotes being vicious and this, that, and that. I'm disappointed at that. I'm grateful that people are willing to think about this. And data gathering is important, but really, I've been doing this for 34 years. The data is so out there, and pretty much what Patrick said does not reflect what happens when coyote populations...
I'm not gonna get arguing.
No, and I didn't even want to talk about that.
Okay.
Sorry. Mr. Hodgson, can the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition be a stakeholder? We would like to. The other thing that you might find of interest is this. So, I don't know if you're aware that wolves are coming through the state. They've been crossing through New England back and forth for about the last 10 years that we have been keeping track. And so they've been captured in scat, on trail cams, that kind of thing. There's also been wolves that have been shot in different states in New England. So when a hunter shoots a wolf, they often post it in social media. And then authorities find out about it, and the hunters have been willing to get DNA samples done on the wolf, on the animal, and it comes back primarily as eastern wolf. So we know that wolves are being shot. They are a federally protected species. Hunters say that they thought the animals were large coyotes, and they've largely been excused from prosecution. Killing an endangered species results in a $10,000 fine and a 2-year...
You need to give a presentation.
Nope, this is information. So let me just...
Why don't you send that to us?
Well, I will, but I want to just get to my point. I've got 2 points here, and I'm sorry, the meeting's gone really long, but... So the first point is that these animals are moving through New Hampshire. And I believe that Fish and Game should at least be aware that these animals are moving through. And that it's super hard to tell the difference between a large eastern coyote and an eastern wolf. Because eastern wolves are basically just a few pounds larger than an eastern coyote. There are ways of telling differences between them, but I would suggest that it's up to Fish and Game to begin to educate hunters to the fact that there are wolves moving through. Just please educate them to that fact. Ideally, you could develop material that would help them understand how to look at a coyote and a wolf and understand the differences between them. I'm really glad to help you with this. I've offered my services for about 25 years. You don't seem to want them, but here I am again. I can help on this, and I'm willing to help. And I will send you this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I just mention as a trapper, we get a brochure from the department, very good description of the difference between a coyote and a wolf, with every time we get a mailing from them. So they have literature, they circulate it.
That's good, but people need to know the wolves are actually out there.
They told us to look for it.
Okay, do we have a motion to end? First, second, we're done.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.